Okay, so Stormzy, the UK native, released a song called Mel Made Do It. And short context, Mel is his stylist, I believe. Yeah, it's a stylist that he takes everywhere with him to events. It's a stylist for his clothes and stuff, which is a weird thing here, especially from him. But I think over time we're gonna get to that point, right, where it's not really necessary. But I think it's a weird thing, right? Like I think the whole purpose of this was to mention a few people, but to say that black excellence in the UK, British excellence is what he was really trying to point out, which I think he does when he talks about strikers. He talks about Mark Nasty, which is the British DJ to make the UK hip hop, which was one of the DJs to make US hip hop, which we're really gonna get into. But I wanna give you kind of a preview of what I'm gonna talk about in this episode, really. So that should be fun. Some more slang, which we'll get to, but let's see how it goes.
This episode is brought to you by Snapple. Welcome to the Snapple Market Auditory Experience. Close your eyes. Imagine you're walking into your neighborhood store. You make your way to the back and reach for your favorite Snapple flavor. You can't wait. You take a sip. Whoa, that's a lot of flavor. What flavor are you holding? Now open your eyes and check out Snapple.com to find ridiculously flavorful Snapple near you.
Okay, so he makes a quick reference of being the GOAT of UK hip hop, and to some extent he's not necessarily wrong. Like, I think his only opponent to me, I think hip hop wise, is an artist like Lil Sims or Dave. But I think he does talk about Dave in that song, so we'll get to that song. But we'll get to that part of the song when we talk about it. But for him to claim that he's on top is a weird thing to me. I think to me it's because if we're trying to figure out who's better at it in hip hop, I don't think we have, especially in UK hip hop, a clear leader. I think the UK hip hop scene has been under more scrutiny than the US hip hop, where people are given their flowers beforehand, which is weird. I think is a weird thing. I think even in this song he gives he said heebie-jeebies, which is a weird thing to say, but it's a Lauryn Hill reference, which I to a degree I understand, and I do like that concept of it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take this line by line, or a few lines. We understand why he claims himself to be the GOAT. That's official, I think, to a degree. Because the Kyrie Irving line of basketball, he says, I'm leaving him hanging like Kyrie on the rim, where Kyrie is known to leave everything on the field, everything on the court. But you get that reference. I think, he says, all right, I've been through, all right, tell me why I replied to him, and, he's had a long-standing beef with MC Chip. Had been at a feud for, I think, 2018, and they're still at it to this day. But I think that's what he's referring to when he says, all right, tell me why. I'll tell you why I would reply, which, I think that's pretty obvious. The 599s is common, but it's not necessarily a thing talked about with Stormy's. He says, I'm a young black Biden with a trim, which is a weird thing to me, I think, to say. I think, especially because a lot of people in the States might not hear Stormy played as much as he's played in, the UK. So I do think that's gonna be a weird line for him to speak about. But he says ooh, and then he says, but he talks later about him owning a Rolls Royce, and then a Rolls Royce, and then a Phantom, which he says that's a different like that. There's a different business to own both of them because there's not that many people owning them. But it's a weird thing to listen to. I think without a doubt you go, yeah, this is a weird thing to mention. I don't know if necessarily this is a great thing to mention. He talks about drugs and people that rappers that have died because of drug overdoses and they've been shot, and we won't get into all of that today. But he talks about, to be fair, I don't really feel Twitter. I'm getting told about not being a real rapper by people that aren't in my field or that don't understand my rap, because Stormy, to some degree, has a complex style of how he raps, which isn't a bad thing, right? Like, that's not a bad thing to go, yeah, that's what you do, yeah, because Stormy is a kind of rapper, so we understand that. And he says he doesn't do it. He doesn't. I think and that's a weird thing to say. He's talked about it before in interviews and stuff like that. He talks about being the bigger fish to fry. He doesn't really care. I think overall he talks about, and I get it. It does seem a little cocky if you're not like a huge fan of Stormy or Stormzy, or you're not elevated to the style, or you don't understand why he's making that claim, right? But I think that claim comes from a lot of stuff he had to go against. That could be beef, that could be anything, which is a weird thing. I think to hear Stormy say, to hear him say it does seem kind of weird. He says that, in a certain way, he says that he was gonna say something about her, body, but he says that his nephew's listening, and his chef is doing, which he's like, I'm gonna watch my words, because I have family listens, and he's making millions, putting people in real positions, which to some degree we understand. He wants to go to he makes a line about the French film festival, that is, they hold films over there, and how to rate them. But the line is, believe all of you giving me the heebie-jeebies, words Lauryn Hill, I'm gonna die on this hill, which is Lauryn Hill's album when she rapped from the Fugees something, but the single is Ready or Not, which she is like, people give me the heebie-jeebies, and so that's why I said heebie-jeebies, which is a weird thing, because I don't think she's British, but he added up to it. He says he's a linebacker like Ali, which is a weird thing, which I think, I'm like an ill linebacker, because, most linebackers don't get the credit they deserve, especially he didn't. Ben's, I forgot to mention Mint's glasses, but, we're gonna talk about that, and I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's gaffers, and gaffers meaning managers or coaches, depending on if you're on a sports team or you're a rapper. It's widely said, but not as widely as people assume it is, and maybe why this line isn't. Yeah, which is why people won't get the gaffer like Scott Parker. He says that Tom Holland is his guy. He says, I'm nasty, but I'm not Marcus. Marcus Nasty being the founder or the co-founder of UK hip hop scene. So he says I dash like I'm, which I think we understand. Chambers is the former British punter. my Dave bro, my bro Dave, which is Dave, yeah, Santana Dave, which I think if you ask me are the two biggest rappers from the UK, is which why he's paying respects to him, which isn't something you really see much, but we're getting that point. And then he says Big Trouble being a punchline, which is a weird thing to say, because that 1-0 loss to, was it Aston Villa? Yeah, I think it was Aston Villa. But I think overall it's not really a bad one, but you just kind of hear like these repetitive punchlines, like the S on my chest is for success, the M it was on my hairline for $1 million, because people were making fun of his hairline, so he put the M for millions on it because he's making millions, which I think is clever. He said Mel made me do it, so he stepped in. This is 7 minutes long, yeah, which isn't really a bad thing. He says 302s, right? It's okay. It's a bit of a palette. Okay, 302s, which is, the O2 Arena, which is, it normally does sell out. So I can bring out Adele, which, I don't know if he's talking about Flips, but as Flips, the guy that is, runs that podcast with, I forgot the guy's name, but they do, he says, me and him don't talk, we fell out, but, it was all love. But I'm not sure if he means, I think he means that, I don't know what Flips he means by that. He says Tom, shout out to Tom, Tom's my guy, he's showing love to Tom Holland, which is a good thing to hear. I think overall we argue if mentioning Tom Holland's rap was decent, but it's a 7-minute rap, he's gonna get a lot of stuff off his chest, which, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think overall you do hear this kind of readiness in his voice. And this is the Stormy, he said, I'm gonna put myself to the test by rapping, because we don't always see it, but it's also true that if he does a publicity stunt, it doesn't only get him the views like if Drake was to do it, it doesn't get him the same publicity, but we talk about that later. But overall, I do think this is a better song from him, and just because of the way it's set up, it's an 8 out of 10 for me, so